The Manly-Warringah Sea Eagles, the club you really have to do 2 previews for because of how much their success hinges on whether Tom Trbojevic is fit to play. Turbo is such a talking point in this side that it's pretty easy to forget all of the other star players that they have. Jason Saab and Tolutau Kola are 2 of the more exciting X-Factor outside backs in the competition. Hamole Olakau'atu is damaging as anything, and Jake Trbojevic is probably the most dependable man in Australia. Manly are one of the more successful teams in the NRL era. The hallowed turf of Brookvale Oval has seen recent greats like Cliff Lyons, Steve Menzies, Jamie Lyon and the Stewart brothers. But with no premierships in 12 years and Daly Cherry-Evans surely nearing retirement, this year is a big one for the Sea Eagles. Manly have made a few interesting off-season signings this year, none more so than Luke Brooks. The man formerly of the West Tigers has been one of the most criticised players in NRL history throughout his career. The Tigers once put a lot of faith in him and a lot of money in him, and unfortunately from the halfback position he did not deliver for the club. It just didn't seem to be a relationship that worked, but there were glimmers of what Luke Brooks was capable of. He'd have the odd game that'd show exactly what the West Tigers thought he could produce. Personally, I am really excited about him being paired with Daly Cherry-Evans in the halves. Having the ability to just relax and play 5/8 without the pressure of having to guide the team around the park and implement a game plan. Brooks has spent so long being the handle rather than the tip of the spear, and perhaps it was just a role that he wasn't perfectly suited to. Obviously, hope is one thing, but I truly believe that he will prove a lot of people wrong this season, because you've got to note as well, when he was coming through at the Tigers, when perhaps the rugby league world was the most excited about him, he was paired with Mitchell Moses, Moses being the 5/8 in that Tigers side. Obviously, Mitchell has gone on to be one of the better halfbacks in the whole NRL, so perhaps although Brooks was wearing the 7 at the time, that was a little misleading as to the role he was actually playing. So I do expect big things from Luke Brooks this season, and I really do think he will deliver. Their biggest loss for me would be Sean Keppie. Now, we saw Sean Keppie impress in his first trial with the South Sydney Rabbitohs. He's just a really solid front rower who will do a job for you. Manly still obviously have the likes of Taniela Paseka, Toph Sipley, Josh Aloiai. Matt Lodge will return early in the season from his ACL injury, but it possibly puts a little more weight on the shoulders of Nathan Brown, the recruit over from the Roosters in the off-season, to deliver consistently in the front row in case of injury or suspension. On to the talking points for the Sea Eagles though, the first being, is this the year of Josh Schuster? Now, obviously it's been very well documented, the struggles of Josh Schuster in recent seasons. He's struggled for fitness, he's struggled for form, he's struggled for general first grade opportunities. He came through as a 5/8 and Manly did believe he was a 5/8, but unfortunately when he was wearing the 6 jumper last season, he didn't deliver anywhere near the level that we thought he would. He's a tricky player because we obviously all saw him playing back row in 2021 and he was fantastic. His line running, his speed, his ball playing were really unique to him in that position. But it does seem like there's consistently some sort of off-field issue around Josh Schuster. It's just a tricky one to really get a bit of a gauge on. He will transition back to the back row this season with Luke Brooks playing 5/8, and it remains to be seen whether he can get back to the form of his early career. But if he is able to, and Manly have him on one edge and Hamole Olakau'atu on the other, it's hard to think of a more damaging back row pairing in the entire NRL. This second talking point is one I'm surprised isn't spoken about more. It's, can Daly Cherry-Evans once again defy the odds and not have a drop-off? Now, obviously, it does feel like Daly Cherry-Evans has been around forever. But I personally was very surprised when I looked up his age and saw that he's 34 years old. He is a player who is absolutely aging like a fine wine, putting in career best form for club and state over recent seasons. A little bit of a tangent here, but I personally think he deserves a lot more credit for doing what he's doing at the age he's doing it. But the risk that you run with older players is that they can just wake up one day and their legs don't work like they used to before. There's higher risk of injuries, and those injuries themselves do take longer to fully heal. I have complete confidence that Daly Cherry-Evans would retire before he ever became a burden on the Sea Eagles, and I don't think this season he will struggle to find form. Evidence shows that he's able to cope with this workload at this age. But it remains a fairly high risk, and given how dependent Manly are on their superstars, it's one that could carry a very hefty price. My third talking point, and another one that I think has gone a little under the radar, is do Manly actually have the coach to get them to where they need to be? Now, obviously we all know Anthony Seibold is a very clever, educated guy. He's got all the qualifications, he's done all the apprenticeships, but it's his record itself that I have a little bit of a concern about. Seibold has lost more games than he's won in the NRL, despite being the head coach of clubs like the Rabbitohs and the Broncos. He obviously had a fantastic rookie coaching season with the Rabbitohs, bringing them to a 3rd place finish and winning Dally M Coach of the Year. But his season after with the Broncos featured a 58-0 finals loss to the Eels, and in the year after that, the club won their first ever wooden spoon. Then last season, he comes into the Sea Eagles and guides them to an unimpressive 12th. Granted, Tom Trbojevic only managed to play 11 games, and it's always going to be tough without your star player, but still, Manly fans would be expecting a finals finish nonetheless. I'd like to be proven wrong, because I think a strong Manly is something that the NRL has lacked over recent years, but unfortunately I just haven't seen quite enough from Seibold to justify the chances he's getting and the faith that people have in him. The silver lining to it is that he will know if he does not achieve success with the Sea Eagles, his coaching career in the NRL is likely over. So if he's ever going to live up to that hype, it's now, and Manly fans will certainly be hoping that he does. So this is my best 17 for the Manly Sea Eagles this season. As usual, a few players highlighted. The first being Jackson Paulo. Now, I've seen a few people put Tommy Talau in that position. Personally, I think Paulo is a specialist winger and Talau is a specialist centre. So really, which one of them plays depends on where you're playing Ruben Garrick. Obviously, Garrick has spent most of his career on the wing. We've seen him be a fantastic fill-in fullback for Tom Trbojevic, but he has come out and said that he would like to transition into centre this season. We've seen Paulo have a fair few opportunities at the likes of the Rabbitohs and the Roosters, and he's always been a decent enough try scorer. It's just other areas of his game that aren't particularly well-rounded enough to be a consistent first grader. If you can find a home on that wing for the Sea Eagles, it's definitely a good spot to be in, but the pressure is well and truly on him to establish himself as a consistent, dependable first grader this year. Skipping all the way through to the bench, number 14, the great Gordon Chan Kum Tong, who anyone can see is going to become an absolute cult hero at Brookvale. He's a dynamic hooker who brings a fair bit of spark, something that the Sea Eagles haven't had much of in recent years, with Lachlan Croker playing in the 9 role. Croker was really solid last season, and that's exactly what he is, a solid dummy half, but is not someone who will have that amount of flamboyance or spark about his game. I think if you start with Lachlan Croker, let him absorb all the big physicality of the opening minutes, and then bring on Chan Kum Tong to a few tied forwards, it could prove a really, really effective for the Sea Eagles. Then in jersey 15, we've got Brad Parker, who has transitioned into being a back rower this year. I love it when centres go into the back row, just because they're always a little bit quicker than the other forwards around them. They've got a little bit more of that try-scoring ability. So I am excited about Parker this season, and that's why he's got the nod for me on the bench. Although with the likes of Ethan Bullymore, Ben Condon and Corey Waddell pushing for that spot, the pressure will be on him to deliver early. So those are my thoughts on the Manly Sea Eagles this season. Obviously, let me know yours. Do you think that this is the right move to put Josh Schuster in the second row? Do you think he will deliver in that role? And do you have confidence that Anthony Seibold is the man to bring success to the Northern Beaches once again? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.